Welcome to Payne on Politics, a podcast where host Dr. Gregory Payne of Emerson College sits down with fellow experts to discuss the current state of politics, public opinion, and global affairs. In a world growing increasingly complex, communication and critical thinking is key. This only makes the Emerson motto, expression necessary to evolution, more true.
Hello, this is Gregory Payne, the Chair of Communication Studies, the first communication department in the United States, also co-director of the Emerson Blanquerna Global Center. We're here for another Payne on Politics. This time we're going down memory lane with an iconic professor from Emerson College. She is someone who knows this part of campus, and then, as she would say, my heart belongs in San Francisco. No, that would be over at the legacy side of campus, and that would be Commonwealth Avenue, 100 Beacon. None other than Professor Bev Conte. Bev, welcome to Payne on Politics.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Now, Bev, I'm just going to ask because I know you started teaching when you were about 5, but how many years have you taught at Emerson?
Probably altogether about 30, I would say.
30 years?
Part-time, always part-time.
Yes. And the range of courses that you've taught?
I taught voice and articulation many, many years.
Which we don't have now, but we should maybe bring it back.
Sadly, we don't have it now. Public speaking.
Always a tradition, a foundation.
Argumentation and debate a couple of times.
And did you ever debate with the Monterosian?
Yes.
Yes.
In the prison, and I used to help.
You were both in prison?
No, we did debating. We used to go and debate the prisoners when I was in graduate school.
Now, what's interesting about that is we have a prison initiative now. But when you were there with Monterosian, he really established that prison initiative. And
Yes.
Littlefield, dear friend of mine and yours,
Yep.
he was always telling me about that they had Malcolm X, they had all these other people that they worked with. Part of the story that Emerson needs to tell a bit more, but lots to get with you about. We'll get back to maybe the prison initiative later. So you worked with Monterosian.
Oh, yes, and he
Yes.
was also a professor of mine.
Now, he did fencing. Was he not a wrestler also?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I think he did all that.
He did
Those
all
were the
that.
good old days.
Oh, those were the great days.
Mama Mitchell.
Yes.
See, I only knew Mama Mitchell for a few years. She was quite a character.
Mama was quite a character. I had her, I believe, in a class, but I also worked for her.
Oh, you
through a
did?
work-study program.
Yes.
So I was her personal secretary.
Now, Mama Mitchell, first, her name was not Mama, right? It was what, June?
June Hamblin Mitchell.
June Hamblin. Could you describe her? Because I think for people that are alums, Dr. Silvestri's coming in, she's quite a tradition.
Yes, she is quite a tradition. I always said she was one of the foundation of Emerson, one of the bricks, however you want to say it. But she was a great lady, extremely talented.
Yes.
Very kind. I thought she was very good to the students. She tried to help students all the time. And I always felt very talented. She, as you know, did the oral interpretation class, which was one of the classes I feared taking for a while.
Right.
Knew I had to do it in
Right.
order to graduate. And she was just wonderful. She helped everybody, full of life.
Right.
Full of life. Big, boisterous voice all the time.
Yes.
Just great.
Well, she's part of that Emerson tradition. You mentioned Emerson's tradition. Now we have one left. Hopefully we'll return, but we used to have to take 4 courses. One was voice and articulation,
Right.
which some people said voice and humiliation because you had to get rid of that accent,
Oh, yes. It was tough.
which means you would still be working with me in terms of pen and get.
Get.
Okay?
Yep.
Southern Illinois, the big muddy little Egypt still right there within me.
Yep.
Voice and articulation, public speaking.
Oral interpretation.
Yes, and
Argumentation and debate. And
Yes.
when I was here as an undergraduate, we also had to take phonetics.
phonetics.
But I had to take that for communication disorders anyway, but yes,
Right.
that was mandated as well.
Well, one thing that I remember back when I was doing some work at the University of Illinois, I interviewed David Brinkley, the journalist. And he had mentioned at that time, he had mentioned Emerson. I didn't know Emerson at the time. But then later, when I came and talked to, not Mama Mitchell, but Fran Lashoto, she told me that she actually worked with Brinkley because he later told her that he was dating a girl at Emerson so that he could work with Fran to get rid of his accent. So if you remember the Huntley-Brinkley report,
yes, I do.
David Brinkley, his distinct pronunciation. But I just mentioned a person, Fran Lashoto. Now, she's no longer with us except in spirit. What was Fran like? Because she was an iconic part of that triumvirate.
Fran, again, I never had Fran for a teacher, but I knew her very well from the department and from working. I liked Fran a lot. I thought she was a great lady.
Yes.
She was somewhat, at times, could be intimidating to some students.
Oh, I can tell you, she was intimidating to me.
And she was tough.
Yeah, very tough.
She was tough, but
Yes.
she had a side of her that you knew she really cared about the students and wanted to help them be successful and get through all these classes and just improve as
Yes.
a communicator.
Well, she was excellent. I remember I used to think, she was very traditional in many ways. But then when we did the 1995 Kent State, Jackson State retrospective here, she read Yevashenko's poem about Allison. So we have that now in the Kent State archive, which is great. But another story, which maybe a lot of people don't know, is that Fran, I remember hearing when I got here, I was fascinated that she worked with President Kennedy when he was running for office in 1960. And I remember saying, is it true that you worked with President Kennedy because he wanted to get rid of his accent? And she looked at me in the usual Fran way and said, yes, I worked with John Kennedy, but it was very clear I did not succeed. He had that accent. So as you could tell, that kind of approach.
Yep.
Now, of course, if you mention Fran Lashoto, another part of that ladder of B&A people and Southwick people, Dr. Kenneth Cornell.
Yes,
Yes.
Dr. Kenneth Cornell.
Yes.
A great man.
Yes.
He used to call me Gina. That was
Yes.
my name.
Well, he was the one who kept the Southwick going after that
Yes.
John Anderson, and now we're blessed with Ken Grout. What was it about Ken that made him such an iconic figure, feared but also loved?
Yes. Well, again, Ken was a very boisterous person, full of life, and even though he had that tough side to him, and you would fear sometime walking in his classroom, or to even open your mouth sometimes, even as a teacher, when we would have meetings, I would be guarded, when I would speak. But you knew that it was all, again, out of a sense of, I love what I do, I love Emerson. I really believe in the philosophy of Emerson, and I want to share that with every person I come in contact with.
Yes.
And I really feel that he believed in that. He was, these people, Greg, in my mind, were Emerson.
Yes.
Each and every one of them.
Well, I know people watching, those people getting ready to come to the alumni weekend, they are really the essence of what the Legacy Campus was about.
Right.
I remember when I went to my first job interview, Dr. Silvestri was chair. We're going to see him in just a few minutes. And he said to me the night before, I was over at the Kennedy School, you can talk about anything you want. So I was going to talk about rhetoric. I was going to be talking about Stephen Toulmin's theory of argument. Then he called me about 9:30 the night before I was coming at 8, and he said, I want you to change. I want you to do something on voice and articulation and Vygotsky's view of linguistics from Russia. And I'm going, I don't know anything about that at all. That's not, we didn't have that in Illinois. And he goes, oh, well, you're at Harvard. You can deal with that. So I remember, going immediately to Harvard Library, looking up this stuff. And I remember coming in, and Fran Lashoto was there, Ken Cornell was there, Walt was there. I don't know if you were there. I got up and gave, a 10-minute presentation. And it was interesting. Fran said later, that was very interesting. And Vito said, I think, I know you didn't know too much about what I told you to, but I wanted you to impress Professor Cornell because he was worried that you would just have rhetoric but no understanding of voice. Oh. And so Ken came up, he had polio and he came up with the crutches, and even then he was coming up to me and he goes, Dr. Payne, I would just like to say a couple of things to you. It was clear to me that you knew nothing about what you were talking about, but you delivered it very well.
There you go.
And so there's still hope. And I thought, oh, okay. I thought, well, I didn't get the job. So then he said, but one thing that I really want to focus on. And I said, what? And he said, what part of southern Illinois did you come from? Because he could cite. And I said, how would you know I'm from southern Illinois? And he goes, well, I don't know if you're from Mount Vernon, north, or south. And so he said, say this word. And I said it, and I said, get. And he said, you're from south of Mount Vernon because you said get. And he said, you can't differentiate between get and get. Say P-I-N and P-E-N. And I'm going pen. And he goes, pen, pen. And what you just did is what you do in the bathroom. You're going to go peeing. So it was baptism by fire with Dr. Cornell. Right now you're back at Emerson, and we want you to stay forever, as they would say if you didn't go to Emerson. What's it like with the Emerson students today? Because they're very different, but then they're very sane, very creative.
Yes, true enough, Greg. I think that for the most part they are very creative students. Most of them really love what they major in. I think they're very dedicated for the most part.
Yes.
And I enjoy them. I learn a lot from them.
Yes.
I love the creativity, different assignments we do in class and what they produced. It's just amazing to me because in spite of the different majors here, I was a communication disorders major as an undergraduate, and then of course I got my degrees in comm studies, and I went on, but even my doctoral degree focused more on language and literacy and that type. And I always loved the students, listening to the students in theater and students who had talent and could perform, because I love that. And
Yes.
I always wanted to do that.
Well, I think you've constantly done that. They love Miss Conte.
Hopefully, I try, but I love it here. This is like a second home to me. I've been connected so many years, but when I think back to the Emerson that I came to as a freshman back in the very, very late 60s and didn't know Emerson or anything about it, but I had a tremendous mentor in high school who told me to come here. She had gotten her master's in
And
theater.
who is the mentor?
Her name was Bernice Bennett. She's now passed.
Okay, but any alums listening, Bernice Bennett will have to talk to Professor Conte at Alumni Weekend.
Yeah, I mean, she was the one who said to me, forget all these other colleges. I thought I was going to Emmanuel, maybe. She said, no, you're going to Emerson. I said, what's Emerson? She told me.
Yes.
And she said, and you're going to major in what they used to call in those days speech and language. I said, what's that? She told me all about it. And I said, oh, I don't know. You do what, she said, you do what I tell you. All my life.
Being a nice Catholic girl, you did that,
She
correct?
was the second mother to me,
Yes.
and I maintained a relationship with her until she passed away 5 years ago.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
my whole life. She was wonderful. She loved Emerson. She trained under Dr. Bender at a master's level in some
Coleman Bender, another iconic figure. Very good friend of Ted Hollingworth. We hope
Yep.
Ted will come back.
Yes.
Also, he's retired
Yep.
but still very active.
Yep.
Yes.
So that's how I got here.
Yes.
She said, that's what you need. You need to go to Emerson.
Right.
Okay.
Well, you know what?
So I
She was
came.
right.
She was right. I was sheltered. And Emerson opened up my eyes to a whole new world.
Yes.
Because I came from a very, protective Italian Catholic background.
And your mother is still what?
My mother.
Wagging that finger, telling you what you
Yes.
need to do. Now, she's
She's
probably going to watch
still-
me. I'd like to say hello. Mrs.
Okay.
Conte, thank you for blessing us with your daughter. And she talks about you all the time, how much she loves you, etc. So we know you're at home, but you're a true Emersonian.
She is.
Now
absolutely.
back to the daughter here.
At 98.
We 98. You've got great genes, so you can
I
teach
hope.
until what? We both will be cuddling around here at 98, right?
I hope so.
Now we have a new president coming in, Dr. Bernhard from Texas. At Texas went to school at Rutgers, then North Carolina. I think he's going to be focusing on communication, which of course is the central part of what Emerson's about. You and I, of course, knew someone very, very dear to us, who was I think the last person who really focused on communication as we know it as a foundation. That would be John Zachris. John was president. He was the person who bought the Anson building. So he was the first person who really sort of said, let's take us over here. Of course, if we have history correct, the Emerson Majestic was purchased not by John, but by Alan Koenig, because when Alan was moving us to Lawrence, at least you were going to have the Majestic. But John was that kind of, would say, the architect, the initial architect of getting us over here, realizing the worth of that campus on the other side. What was it about John that inspired not just me, but others in terms of his leadership?
Well, John, as you say, I still refer to him as Doc.
Yes.
He was a professor of mine. I learned a great deal from him. A wonderful man, just a great guy, and another true Emersonian who loved this place. I mean, he would, I think, have done anything for Emerson. As you know, he went to school here too, and he helped me so much when I was an undergraduate, and brought out things to me about myself that I didn't even realize. I say, well, I don't know if I should do that. Maybe I don't know, that's too tough. And he'd say, you can do it. I'll help you, you can do it. Mm-hmm. And he helped me achieve a lot. He was a wonderful man, a great mentor. I miss him terribly.
Yes.
And every time I come to Emerson, there's never a minute that I'm here, Greg, that I don't think about him.
Yes.
And Haig and all of them.
Yes.
Who were just terrific people. And really, this college was their life.
Right.
In many ways.
Right.
As it is with some of us now.
Exactly, some of us who don't go home.
Right.
I remember, John, when, of course, Alan left and we were looking for a president. We wanted John in faculty. I wasn't tenured at the time, but I was still appointed as chair. And we did this We Back Zach campaign. You remember those buttons?
Remember. Yep, I have the buttons.
And I remember Dr. Silvestri coming in and saying to me, when you meet McElwraith, who the board had put in as president,
I remember.
You can tell him, I was very instructed at that time, you can tell him that you enjoy meeting him, but when he leaves, just indicate you're not my president. So I remember meeting with him and telling him, okay, it's nice to meet you, but you're not my president. That was a very interesting, I would say, faculty-led approach where we ended up getting John in, and I worked as his special assistant and took over PR and some others because we needed to clear that out. It wasn't working. And then tragically, of course, he got cancer and was with us for a short time. But I think even though he was here for a short time, of course, his room downstairs here in the Walker Building, when I go in and I read that theme from Tennyson that, we're all Emersonians, I think he continues to inspire us.
Oh, I do too, absolutely. Every day. Every day.
And what I'm hoping, if Jay Bernhardt is listening, Mr. President, pick up that same can-do spirit, because it's alive and living as we embrace communication, which is the foundation. Bev Conte, I would like to thank you for coming to Payne on Politics. I'm sure we'll be meeting again. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your history. And in a parting thought, I would say, just as you tell people, be true to the tradition, be true to your mom. Give her a hug when you see her, okay?
Absolutely, and thank you very much. This was a pleasure.
Thank you, Payne on Politics. We'll see you as soon as we find another iconic figure like Bev. Look forward to seeing you back at Payne on Politics at Emerson College.